Namaste, World Raisers. Sabina and Roger here. Let's continue with the study of the Ashtavakra Gita. Today we are reading Chapter 2, The Joy of Self Realization, and Chapter 3, The Test of Self Realization.
Yeah, so remember we're reading from a free PDF, and we're going to leave a link in the description and the pinned comment so you guys can access that and read along with us. So these teachings are very, very deep. So remember, if you're not ready for the absolute ultimate reality teachings, then that is totally fine. But we request that, you don't join us at this time. But when you are ready, then absolutely these videos are going to be up here. All right, so let's take a deep breath. And on the out breath, release any sense of knowing anything. Let go of all of our attachments to the wisdom and knowledge that we think we possess as we empty our cup and prepare our minds for some higher wisdom to flow in. And prepare to contemplate and meditate and seek to grasp these teachings. And we can even pray for the capacity to be able to comprehend, not from the level of ego to serve our nefarious purposes and pride, but to let go of all that in humility as we seek to understand the truth.
Chapter 2, Joy of Self-Realization. I am now spotless and at peace. Awareness beyond consciousness. All this time I have been duped by illusion. By this light alone, the body and the universe appear. I am everything or nothing. Seeing there is no universe or body, by grace the self is revealed. As waves, foam, and bubbles are not different from water, so the universe emanating from self is not different from self. Look closely at cloth. You see only threads. Look closely at creation. You see only self. As sweetness pervades sugarcane juice, I am the essence of creation. Not seeing self, the world is materialized. Seeing self, the world is vanished. A rope is not a snake, but can appear to be. I am not other than light. The universe manifests at my glance. The mirage of universe appears in me, as silver appears in mother of pearl, as a snake appears in a rope, as water appears on a desert horizon. Wow, I think he already got it. Did he get enlightened through the first chapter?
Yeah, well, the insights are definitely there. So whether he's having a high realization or an intellectual conception of ultimate reality, it's hard to say just now because, many of us can understand these deep teachings like that without having the, perception of it. So just understanding that even our power of perception to be able to have access to the senses is derived from consciousness. So literally, some say that the whole universe is being created through our observation of it, because if it wasn't for the capacity to be aware of what we perceive as external to us, then we couldn't say that it exists. So literally, the universe exists within our mind, right? Because if it wasn't for the power of consciousness and awareness, the big mind, then we wouldn't be aware that anything exists. And without that awareness, you couldn't say that anything exists. It's impossible. So people kind of debate, scientifically even, that the world is external and the universe is outside of us and then we exist within it. But there's no way to prove that. You can't. You can't prove it without consciousness. So this is a fundamental problem within science. And slowly, we're starting to point towards the observer, because there's some really weird things that happen scientifically because there's an observer there. And if there was no, and without an observer, things behave differently, right? So ultimately, nothing exists without our awareness. And because we have the awareness, then we're integral and part of it. So literally everything, all sentient beings, everything in the whole world, the whole universe exists within us, ultimately. So that's the insight that he's getting here, right? So when you're looking at the different examples, he's looking at a piece of cloth, but the cloth doesn't exist separate from the threads, and the threads don't exist independently of the atoms that make up the threads. And where do the atoms and the quarks and the particles come from? Well, they're coming from the ultimate source of everything. There's one thing manifesting as all things, right? Mm-hmm. So awareness itself. And I just want to touch on, so emptiness I mentioned in the last chapter, and then some people thought that I was talking about empty space, which I'm not talking about empty space there. Oh. Emptiness in the Buddha's teaching basically means that we're empty of existing inherently from our own side or our own power. That's all it means. It doesn't refer to a nothingness or a void or an empty space. It's empty of independent existence, right? So then he uses classic examples like the snake and the rope and all of these examples here as well, where also some of the sages came after the Buddha. They're talking about like the chariot is the classic example, where you can totally deconstruct a chariot and you can't find the chariot anywheres, right? So it's empty. It doesn't exist inherently. And you can do that for anything within the material existence, right? So everything is dependent on something else.
Even the self, the ego.
Yeah.
Try to find yourself.
Absolutely, yep.
I feel like Janaka got it a little quicker than Arjuna.
Yeah, instant. Yeah, he must have been like incredibly ripe. But we know the backstory where he was seeking, and he was talking to many, many sages before Ashtavakra.
Oh, right.
And then, of course, just being in the presence, something might have catalyzed there when you're in the presence of enlightened beings.
As a pot returns to clay, a wave to water, a bracelet to gold, so will the universe return to me. I am wonderful indeed, beyond adoration. I cannot decay nor ever die. Though God and all the universe should perish to the last blade of grass. I am wonderful indeed, beyond adoration. Even with the body I am one. I neither come nor go. I am everywhere at once. I am wonderful indeed, beyond adoration. I am astounded at my powers. The universe appears within me, but I do not touch it.
So he's speaking on behalf of the self, right? And the self is kind of synonymous with ultimate reality, God, the source of absolutely everything. So he's speaking from that perspective. It's like the source of the awareness in the infinite field of consciousness that all things rise from, right? So he's speaking as that.
Wow. I am wonderful indeed, beyond adoration. I am everything thought or spoken, and have nothing. In reality, knowledge, the knower, and the knowable do not exist. I am the transparent self in which through ignorance they appear.
Yeah, so this is talking about, the absolute and non-duality, right? So when you think about the knower, the known, and then the act of knowing, right? In reality, that's conceptual, right? So we perceive ourselves dualistically, so then we think that here I am and I know something, so I'm the knower of this, and then the knowingness is separate, and then the known is also separate. But in reality, for enlightened beings, that is all transcended. There is no difference between what is known and the knower, because it's just It's just what it is. It's just pure wisdom. There's a pure beingness that doesn't differentiate between external and internal. Everything is just one, right? So there's no duality there of a separate knower and a knowing of what is known, right? It's just, there's nothing to know because everything is what it is, right? And then you can think also about our intellectual knowledge that we think is this wisdom of knowing, when really all we really do is we're knowing about stuff. So we don't ever actually know anything, we just know about things, and then we call that knowledge, when really it's no different than Google. You know, when you Google something and then you have that, like what it is, what you're searching for, you can access that. Well, the wisdom that we think that we have is all derived conceptually, right? It's not real wisdom.
Looking at one and seeing many is the cause of all misery. The only cure is to realize what is seen is not there. I am one, aware, blissful, immaculate. I am unbounded awareness. Only in imagination do I have limits. Reflecting on this, I abide in the Absolute. I am neither free nor bound. The illusion of such things has fallen into disbelief. Though I contain creation, it has no substance.
Yeah, so looking at one and seeing many, so that's the duality, right? So even when we're looking at other sentient beings, right, and we perceive ourselves as separate, when in reality there's only one consciousness, there's only one awareness, call it by whatever name, but it's the light. It's the light of consciousness in all sentient beings, that's one. So literally it's that light consciousness is seeing itself. So that's why, of course, Namaste means the light in me recognizes the light in you, and that light is one light. So there is no division. And when you get into that, I am one, aware, blissful, immaculate, then that's these heightened, enlightened states that the enlightened beings are in. They're just blissful all the time. So neither free nor bound. So this is that duality of even existence or non-existence, right? So the ultimate is beyond that. And then for enlightened beings, it doesn't matter. This is a magical display, and you're not getting into the trap of thinking that this doesn't exist. It does exist conceptually, right? Conventionally, conventional reality, but ultimate reality, we know even just by science that this is all 99.9 repeating empty space. It's an illusion. It's a mirage. It's like a rainbow, but we're in it. And for us, lowly, dualistic perceiving beings, it appears very real. We get caught up in it, in our ego, in our personality, and it's in the flux. So we got to be in the world, and we got to purify these, negative karmas, our delusions, by practicing the teachings so that we don't get caught and trapped, and we start to undo the binds and then free ourselves, so then we could be like him, where he's unbounded. Though I contain creation, it has no substance. And we know that scientifically, right? All the things that we perceive as real, solid matter, they're actually not like that. It's all just energy, right? The energy of consciousness itself.
Having seen for certain that this universe and body is without form or substance, I am revealed as awareness alone. Imagination has no place here. The body exists only in imagination, as do heaven and hell, bondage, freedom, and fear. Are these my concern, I who am pure awareness? I see no differences or separation. Even the multitudes appear as a single formless desert. To what should I cling? I am not the body, I do not have a body. I am awareness, not a person. My thirst for life bound me to a seeming life. In the limitless ocean of myself, the winds of the mind roil the myriad waves of the world.
our consciousness and getting caught up and even being in this realm says that we're trapped to it. My thirst for life bound me to a seeming life. So we're literally creating our reality. So we're this ultimate indestructible self, the source of consciousness itself, but we get caught up in the dream and then this desire for material existence, which is why we're all incarnating. But ultimately, we're one with the highest reality. Our consciousness is the true self, right? And then we get caught up in it. So the winds of the mind roil the myriad waves of the world, literally the limitless ocean of ourselves. So very symbolic of Vishnu on the cosmic ocean, dreaming all these universes. Well, each one of these universes you can think of as yourself, right? So who's to say that, we're all within this realm of existence right now, but who's to say that this realm of existence isn't infinite in number, just this realm itself, and each one of it is our consciousness manifesting as it, right? When you think about infinite universes, you got to contemplate that, right? So literally the universe is within yourself, and we're creating it.
But when the wind subsides in the limitless ocean, the ark of personhood is swallowed up, along with the universe it carries. And how wonderful it is, in the limitless ocean of myself, waves of beings arise, collide, play for a time, then disappear as is their nature.
Yeah, cool. The limitless ocean, so that's the goal, moksha, liberation. The personhood is swallowed up, and then we realize that we never were the person, right? This is a magical display. That's why they say it's like a play, it's a dream, it's an illusion. So this is happening, and when we're in it, it seems very, very real. But like I said before, even science is pointing to the illusory nature of what we think is reality, when actually reality is the consciousness itself, the source of the dream. It's the source that's the reality, not the dream itself, right? So what he says, waves of beings arise, collide, play for a time, like what's happening now in the world, all of the politics, all of the drama, all of the goals and the dreams and the wishes, and everybody's just trying to survive independently. That's all how it is, right? And then some people get on the spiritual path sooner than others and then start to transcend and get out of the dream, whereas others are in it, right? And that's the purpose of this realm. So there's nothing to judge there. So when we're talking about raise ourselves and raise the world, it is still possible for the world to turn into, a more heavenly realm, because we know that it is that in past yugas. So it is the nature of this realm to be very heavenly at times, and then it degenerates. But ultimately, it's like go time. If you want to exit, this is the time. Can't wait for the personhood to be swallowed up. Ultimate reality.
Chapter 3, Test of Self Realization.
Cool. So the first chapter was instruction on self-realization. And then what do we have?
The joy of self-realization. Janaka having a taste of the ultimate reality.
And now it's the test. So Ashtavakra said, having realized yourself as one, being serene and indestructible, why do you desire wealth?
Indeed.
Why?
Well, I'm...
You're Janaka, I'm asking you.
I'm asking you. I pause here.
Just as imagining silver in mother of pearl causes greed to arise, so does ignorance of self cause desire for illusion. Having realized yourself as that in which the waves of the world rise and fall, why do you run around in turmoil? Having realized yourself as pure awareness, as beautiful beyond description, how can you remain a slave to lust? It is strange that in a sage who has realized self in all and all in self, this sense of ownership should continue. So for an enlightened being who realizes the ultimate, that he's one with everything, then there's nothing to own because you are everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think he's still cutting through delusions, and we don't know if all these chapters happened in one sitting, right? It could have been Janak had the taste and then went back to ruling the kingdom, and then on and on and on, and then Ashtavakra had to give these teachings, right? Being that, because he's still maybe attached, even though you've had the taste, then you're being tested, right?
Indeed.
Strange that one abiding in the absolute, intent on freedom, should be vulnerable to lust and weakened by amorous pastimes. Strange that knowing lust as an enemy of knowledge, one so weak and nearing death should still crave sensual pleasure. Yeah, so maybe Janak maybe had many wives, or just one very beautiful wife, and then was just caught up in the lust. This is really touching on that. So we know that it's a very big desire in the world, right? So we have this craving of sensual pleasure, and then we want to, get married or however it is, and then we get caught up, right? Especially in today's day and age where you just see it everywhere. It's like sex sells, right? So music videos, and you got this beauty, everything's alluring and captivating, and that's gets the click, gets the attention. Strange that one who is unattached to the things of this world and the next, who can discriminate between the transient and the timeless, who yearns for freedom, should yet fear the dissolution of the body. Whether acclaimed or tormented, the serene sage abides in the self. He is neither gratified nor angered. A great soul witnesses his body's actions as if they were another's. How can praise or blame disturb him?
That's interesting.
Yeah, so from the ultimate reality, and we know this from descriptions from enlightened beings, it's more of you're more identified with the witness, not just identified like intellectually, but that's your perception. So you're perceiving everything. It's almost like your consciousness or your soul is like hovering outside the body, like a third-person camera following you around. So then the body is performing these actions by the modes of material nature that are kind of still operating, except much more purely, so it's more driven to be of service to others kind of automatically, and then the consciousness is like following around in the sense that this persona, and it's not a personality anymore, it's more of a functioning, if the body is even able to speak, because we know, I think it was Ramana Maharshi, I think he fell into silence. It was one of them, either him or Nisargadatta Maharaj, where they couldn't speak for like 2 years, and then the body had to relearn how to speak again. Yeah, I think it was one of them, but it could have been someone else. But these are what happens. You got to think about it. You transcended the ego. The ego death is only the only real death that can happen, because your soul, your real self, is immortal. But the ego, that's why like ego death is such a trending topic all over the place right now. But I think people aren't really understanding it. So you think that you can have some spiritual realizations, some insights, the spiritual awakening process where we're aware of spirituality and the higher things, and then we conceptualize that, and then we think that we're awakened, but no, not yet. Realizing the universe is illusion, having lost all curiosity, how can one of steady mind fear death? With whom can we compare the great soul, who, content knowing self, remains desireless in disappointment? Why should a person of steady mind, who sees the nothingness of objects, prefer one thing to another? He who is unattached, untouched by opposites, free of desire, experiences neither pleasure nor pain as events pass through. So this is this really unwavering equanimity, right? So it doesn't matter what's happening and transpiring and challenges and obstacles, good things, bad things. That's all perception on the level of form and ego mind. But in reality, ultimately it doesn't really matter what happens because everything is just a magical display anyways. Everything is the arising. You got karma, you have the unfoldment of interactions in this huge sea of different ego consciousnesses interacting and other beings, and right? And it's just, wow. It's like an incredibly advanced and sophisticated 3D simulation movie that's happening. That's not real, right? That's why you're getting into like the Matrix. People saying that we're in a simulation. And technically, without going too like cyber crazy, it is a simulation in the sense that it's not real, but it's not coming in from any sort of supercomputer. It's coming from God, from the source, from consciousness itself, being all things. And it's incredibly sophisticated because we get lost in the dream, and then we're trapped, and then we're perceiving ourselves as separate, and then it's like chaos. But at the same time, we can see it for how beautiful it is. It's like, once we understand that nobody's really dying, we're all immortal, and we're all just picking up different bodies playing these roles. So when you remember like the drama of the Mahabharata, what an incredible drama, right? Leading to an ultimate battlefield, and you have these egos, clashing, some more advanced spiritually than others. It was very apparent. Yeah, it's an incredible movie. You see the whole world as just a movie, and you don't get caught up in it, right? So as people who aren't enlightened yet, how do you behave? Well, you got to keep the teachings in mind, and this in particular, and understanding that, okay, well, we're more than this, right? And if we are, then you are as well. So then we start seeing and behaving with others from a higher level. Love one another, right? Because if I'm manifesting at all that is, then literally everything is a part of me, including all of you guys watching and Sabine. It's like we're one in reality. So that's where love one another, care for each other, have compassion for one another, right? And those are the best ways to transcend the levels. You learn anything, Janek? Why are you going to be still so caught up in desire, pleasure, and pain?
I know, hey, I know. I loved when Janak started a few, paragraphs. I am wonderful indeed, beyond adoration. It's so moving. Recognizing one's own divinity, one's own beauty, perfection.
So that ultimate reality, it's the source of absolutely everything, and you can say that it is everything in existence. So it doesn't need adoration. It doesn't need worship, right? So true worship and devotion, and if you become a bhakti and you're devoted to a particular deity, we got to keep in mind that devotion and that's for our benefit, right? Because God doesn't need anything, right? And your higher self doesn't need anything either. And nobody has to evolve and transcend. None of us need to become enlightened. We can just keep going through the cycle of samsara endlessly, right? So when you get into the demoniac demons and other beings that want to remain separate from God, and it ultimately is their choice, you could say that it's their delusions and it's their karmas that led them to be like that, but that's still due to the power of the divine itself within them to be what they choose to be, right? So you can choose to transcend your ego and become one with God, or you can also choose to deny God and be an independent, separate ego identity that could still, become quite powerful. It's all about freedom. So we chose to be here, and we can choose to transcend and leave as well, right? But that takes a certain yearning, a dedication, and a commitment to the journey. All right, so very, very, very deep. I'm absolutely loving this. It's getting me back into, the roots of my spiritual journey, learning about all of these higher things, ultimate reality, It's within, the whole universe is within us, and that's tough to grasp, but we gotta, contemplate the teachings and understand, okay, well, what is the source of my beingness? And it's the awareness itself. It's just, that's the root, because if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't be aware, and then you could kind of rest in that. So you could practice turning inward to that light of consciousness, and then seeing that everything else is an appearance to it, right? So the ego being is still, going to function and perform its duties, but try to be more observational, and when it's interacting with others, don't claim it as me, right? So, just something to practice. Because onward and upward, or inward, however you understand that, right? It's inward, it's upward. Who knows? It could be, some people might say it's downward, because really there's no direction. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we wish you all the blessings from the supreme source of your existence, the absolute truth of yourself in reality. And why are we doing this and learning all of this deep, profound spiritual wisdom? It's to raise ourselves
and raise the world. Thank you so much, everyone. We love you.
Peace.